Hi everyone, welcome back to the Sports Breakdown once again. So today we are going to do a recap actually. Back in 2004, 2005, we know the last time when Australia won a test series in India, the Border-Gavaskar Trophy. As we know, it started back in 1996. It was inducted back then, and then we know India won 9 times and Australia won 5 times. But right now we know the Border-Gavaskar Trophy is going on right now in India, 1-0 right now to India. But still, we want to discuss the last time that Australia actually won the Border-Gavaskar Trophy. It's an interesting series as well. A lot of things happen in that series. So alongside, we have Neel from Destroy The Stumps Podcast joining us. So how are you, Neel? And it's been great. I mean, since we discussed about Sri Lanka back, I think 3 months back. So how have you been doing this year so far, Neel?
Yeah, been good. Happy New Year to you, mate. Also, Happy New Year to you all. Well, it's been more than a Happy New Year, but Happy New Year to everybody in Sri Lanka as well. Hope everyone's good over there. Yeah, it's been interesting. A lot of cricket's been happening since then.
Yeah.
It's just a lot of stuff to keep up with in the cricket world.
Very
And
true.
this series between Australia and India currently, it's interesting. This second test, we're into the second day of it. I think Australia's on top, but anything can happen.
Yeah. So let's discuss about the last time that Australia won a series in India. So I think that was back in 2004, 5, and we know Australia won that series 2-1, and we know Damien Martyn was the man of the match. But first of all, Neel, I was like maybe 2 or 3 years back then, so I didn't watch the series obviously. So I obviously watched the highlights of this series because I was too small back then. But your thoughts, first of all, initially, I think you might have been a kid back then, maybe 20 years back. So, first of all, we know that Ricky Ponting didn't play the whole series. It was Adam Gilchrist who had to step up because Ricky Ponting got a finger injury. So your thoughts, I mean, Gilchrist leading this side, especially when Ponting, I think it was immediately after Steve Waugh, obviously, stepped down as Australian Test captain. Then Ricky Ponting took over, and since Ricky Ponting got injured, then only Adam Gilchrist had to step forward and captain. So your thoughts of the Australian team before that series against India back in 2004, and how good was this Australian team, especially back in 2004, especially to win a series like this in India?
Yeah, about that Australian team. Growing up, I hated them when I was a kid, but as I grew up, I admired how good they were and like massive respect for that team. And after this series, they really just showed. They proved why that team was just one of the greatest Test teams ever to play the game. Probably one of the greatest teams to ever play the game. Because they won a Test series everywhere in the world. They beat everyone in their backyard and they beat teams at home. Playing in Australia was tough anyway, but
Yeah.
going to other countries and beating them convincingly in their own countries was just another skill. And like heading into this series, the 2004 one, I was in year four at the time. A lot of teams struggled in India, and even if you look back since 2000, only 3 teams have won a Test series in India. South Africa won it in 2000 under the captaincy of the late Hansi Cronje. They won that series in India 2-0. Australia won in 2004 2-1, and the last team to beat India in India was England in 2012. So India's a very tough place to tour. Those pitches, India just love playing spin and while people struggle. So it was a big series. That Australian cricket team, the depth was amazing. Domestic cricket was strong. They had so many good players on the bench, and in domestic cricket that didn't even have a go. At that stage, Michael Hussey didn't even make his Test debut. Think about that. He had such a good record. He had guys like Martin Love, and then Michael Clarke made his Test debut in the first Test of this series. He had a
Yes.
good record, and he was well renowned as a good spinner, a good player of spin. He showed it in that first Test. So yeah, and there was a huge hype around the series in Australia at the time, and it was big as publicity. The Australians publicly said like we want to conquer India. This was seen as the final frontier. And if you look back in history, 3 years prior to this series, Australia played India in India. Saurav Ganguly was captain. Steve Waugh was captain of Australia. India won that series 2-1. Australia came very close to winning it, but if it wasn't for VVS Lakshman and Rahul Dravid and Harbhajan Singh, then Australia would have won that series. But then Steve Waugh called India as the final frontier, and it was hyped in the media a bit like this is the final frontier in 2004. We got to conquer this. If we conquer India, then this pretty much seals our legacy. Even though they were pretty much one of the greatest team, the best team in the world at the time, and they were probably one of the greatest teams ever. But they were desperate to win in India. Just get that monkey off the back, and that's what they did.
Yeah, very true. And I think back in 2001, we know Harbhajan Singh was the bowler, I think, who debuted also back in the India versus Australia series and all. I think Australia got bamboozled, obviously, on his debut. I think in that series itself, he got 21 wickets or something. And I think in the 2004 series also, Harbhajan Singh also was the main threat, especially he was the main, along with Anil Kumble, obviously, both of those spinners were a threat to the Australian batters. So your thoughts, especially because Harbhajan Singh, obviously 2001 series, he came as an unknown. He bamboozled. I mean, he surprised the Australian batters, got around 20-21 wickets. I think he was the highest wicket take, if I'm not mistaken, or the second.
Yeah, he got about 32, I think, in
Yeah,
that
32,
series.
yes. That's what, yeah. So your thoughts, especially the plans that Australia had, because especially we know Anil Kumble was a world-class spinner. Anyways, he's a legend when it comes to Indian spin attack. As a bowler itself, he's a legend anyways. But Harbhajan Singh, an X factor for India, obviously back then in 2001 and even in 2004. I mean, after picking up 32 wickets in that series, how do you think, how did Australia counter Harbhajan Singh's plans? Anyways, I think they did struggle against him still in 2004, but still the plans of Australia especially, yeah.
Yeah. It was a good point there because everybody did their bit in that series. If I put the batting aside as well, bowlers bowled beautifully for Australia, and like Shane Warne, who the late great Shane Warne, he struggled in India a lot against the likes of Tendulkar and that, but that was his best series that he's ever had in India. He had a great series there. The part-time bowlers did their bit. Michael Clarke picked up a 6-wicket haul in one of the matches, even though Australia lost that final test.
Yeah.
But the fast bowlers came to the party. Glenn McGrath was excellent. Jason Gillespie was Australia's leading wicket taker. And Michael Casperwoods bowled well. So the bowling unit was excellent as well. They knew their roles. They did their part. They played their roles superbly. They executed their plans really well. And just like this, I think that desperation with the Aussies, they were just so desperate to win in India. It was such a big goal for them at the time. And that attitude just really, and they were a champion team. That it's just well documented. They were such a champion team. And that attitude just reflected in their style of play. And also, if you keep a note, Damien Martyn, who batted number 4, the Western Australian batsman who played for Australia, he had an excellent series. He was the leading run scorer, scored a couple of hundreds. He was the leading run scorer from both teams. Michael Clarke was the second highest run scorer. They used their feet really well to the spinners. They really took it to the Indian spinners, especially Anil Kumble and Harbhajan Singh. Even though those two got a lot of wickets, they still took it to them and made it hard for the Indian team to come up with plans to try to keep the runs tight and just keep Australia restricted. And India just really, especially in the first 2 or 3 matches, India really struggled to contain Australia.
Yeah.
And then, of course, like I mentioned, the bowling unit was excellent, and they did their job. But and even Simon Kadich had a decent series, couple of innings as well. But if you want to look back prior to that series as well, like I mentioned before a little bit earlier, Australia they went to other countries and conquered teams in their own backyards. It was just India they couldn't conquer. True. When it came to test matches. They beat Sri Lanka earlier that year with the great Murali, the greatest off spinner of all time. They beat Sri Lanka 3-0. And in all 3 of those test matches, they were trailing after the first innings and they somehow won.
Yeah.
And they beat Pakistan in the UAE and Sri Lanka. They clean swept them. They beat Pakistan in 1998 in Pakistan. So I guess those type of series wins, like in subcontinent conditions, helped them a lot as well. And just the attitude that team had, that they were so desperate to win in India, was just that was a huge factor. And most of those players hit their peak at the right time, and the talent that was there in the Australian team was excellent. Also, one thing I think for India was there was a few problems with India at the time as well.
Yeah.
Not taking anything from Australia. Sachin Tendulkar was out for most of the series. He had a tennis elbow injury, and when he came back, he wasn't at his best. There was the controversy with Sourav Ganguly the day before the third test at Nagpur, I think it was, or Kanpur. Nagpur, the pitch was green, and he wasn't happy with the pitch, and he just said he was injured, and then Rahul Dravid had to take over in the last two tests.
Yes.
So there was a bit going on in Indian cricket, and they didn't have a good Champions Trophy heading into that series as well. They were a bit all over the place, so it was good timing for Australia to play India at that time.
Very true, yeah. And also your thoughts on the, that's Shane Warne's delivery to VVS Lakshman in the first test at Bangalore. They say that's perhaps like in the ball of the century, perhaps category in the 21st century, especially that delivery of Shane Warne to VVS Lakshman in that first test at Bangalore. I've watched it several times as well. That was a brilliant delivery, and we've seen Shane Warne doing this multiple times, especially to getting, as we know, that was the ball of the century back in the 20th century. So your thoughts, especially Shane Warne, as you said, had a brilliant series. I think was after Gillespie, I think he was the second highest wicket taker and was the leading spin bowler also for Australia back then. So your thoughts on that delivery, especially what Shane Warne bowled?
That delivery was excellent. Just such a perfectly pitched delivery. And if you beat a player like VVS Lakshman in those conditions, and VVS Lakshman took Shane Warne apart in that famous Eden Gardens test in 2001 with Rahul Dravid.
Yeah.
So, and to produce that type, and just also keep in mind that Shane Warne came back after being banned for a year as well. Earlier in 2004, he came back after a year, and he was just something else when he came back. He was just really more hungry to achieve and just get his team, help his team to victory in that. That delivery to VVS Lakshman, just a perfect leg break delivery, bamboozled VVS Lakshman. And like, if you can get a batsman like VVS Lakshman who plays spin so well, if you can get him out in that manner, that's just brilliance. Even the guy Ravi Shastri, I think, was on commentary at the time. He was just full of praise for Shane Warne.
Yep.
And Ravi Shastri's seen his fair share of spinners. So, yeah, like that's just an amazing delivery. That's what Shane Warne did. He did it so many times in his career. It's just he was just a highlight reel.
Yep.
It was an amazing delivery, honestly. Just such a perfect delivery, and that was a delivery that kind of changed the momentum as well. And like the Australians, like, you just know when Shane Warne, you can trust Shane Warne to produce a moment like that in a game when your team needs it. And after that, you could just see the attitude of the Australian teams. It reflected as well. Shane Warne just pumped them up, and like the team just fed off that energy. And Australia ended up winning that test match by that first test in Bangalore by 217 runs. They absolutely smoked India in that first test, and that set the tone for the rest of the series.
Very true, yeah. And also, Neel, your thoughts on Michael Clarke, because we know he debuted in that test series, and then, as we know, he became a test legend, obviously becoming the test captain for Australia in the future. So your thoughts, especially on Michael Clarke's debut test series, because I think he was the second highest scorer, as you said, or mentioned also earlier. He had a very good series, and then in the follow-up, obviously, we know how Michael Clarke has been in test cricket and also became the test captain and captain for all three formats as well. So your thoughts of that young Michael Clarke who played in India, his debut test series, obviously, and he also wanted to make an impression, obviously, and I think he delivered, I think, in that test series.
Yeah, that innings, probably one of the best innings I've seen by a foreign batsman in India, honestly. And especially at that, with and that's in your debut match, playing in those type of conditions, really tough conditions. Even though he was well renowned in domestic cricket in Australia as a good player of spin, there's video footage on, Rob Belinda, Australian YouTuber.
Yeah, yes.
Like, he has plenty of old cricket footage, domestic cricket footage in Australia. And he showed some footage of Michael Clarke versus Shane Warne, and like there were times where Michael Clarke struggled against Shane Warne in domestic cricket, but there was times where he played him beautifully. And that's just proof how good he was against spin. But At the time, he was he had a pretty good. He was decent. He was playing. He played a few ODIs for Australia prior to the series, so he had a bit of experience on the international stage. But Test match is just a different thing. And in India, it's a big challenge to perform like that against two guys like Harbhajan Singh and Anil Kumble, who had excellent records in India. It's a real tough challenge, and he played superbly, just led from the front really, and on debut it's just such an amazing innings. His footwork, his timing, the placement of his shot, his placement was excellent. His footwork, I was just in awe. I watched that innings a couple of times on YouTube as well. I'm just like, wow, that's amazing confidence. Michael Clarke loves playing it. He ended up loving playing at Bangalore because he scored a couple. He loved playing at Bangalore. Got a few runs over there. And then after that, he became one of Australia's best batsmen. Unfortunately, he had a few injuries to the back end of his career. He had a bit of a back issue, which was well publicized.
Yes.
But he had a really good career. And I reckon if it weren't for injuries, his average would be over 50, but still a great record and awesome leader.
Yep.
And that innings, Bangalore will always be they'll probably be still one of his best knocks ever. That's one of the best knocks I've seen by a foreign batsman in India.
I agree on that. Yeah. And also thoughts on Jason Gillespie, because I think he was the leading fast bowler. I think he got the highest wicket take. He got the highest wickets also for Australia in that Border-Gavaskar Trophy series back in 2004-5. I think he was really good. He was in rhythm and really troubled the Indian batters. So your thoughts of the contributions of Jason Gillespie in that series?
Bowled well in partnerships, especially with Glenn McGrath. He bowled well in partnerships with all of the bowlers. Did his bit. He kept things tight. He used some variations as well. He could bowl at a good pace, but he used his variations really well. And he picked up 5 in that match against in the third test, Nagpur. And picked up 9 wickets to seal in that victory and helped Australia seal the series and create a bit of history in that third test. Huge contribution. He loved playing against India for some reason, always seemed to perform well against India. And his contribution in that series was immense, just charging in. And around October time, India, it's not as hot as it would be in the middle of the year, but still fairly hot conditions, humid as well. And for a fast bowler to bowl like that, it just motivates your team as well, just uplifts the team. And he just came in, charged in, used his variation, used his wits to pick up wickets on those pitches in India. And his contribution to that Australian team in that series was immense. Yeah. And if he didn't contribute like that, it would have been tough for the Aussies to pull off a series victory in India.
Very true. Neel, your thoughts of Adam Gilchrist's leadership, because I think until the 4th test, I think he had to obviously lead that test team. Obviously, Ponting came back in the 4th test match, but your thoughts, especially Gilchrist keeping, I mean, he had a good series as well with the bat as well, and also leading this team. And obviously, I think Australia were 2-0 before Ponting came in the 4th test. And unfortunately, Australia lost that close test match, but your thoughts of Gilchrist's leadership? It was his first series, and he's also the last captain now for Australia to beat India in India away. So, your thoughts of his contributions, especially as a captain, because not easy, especially taking a responsibility like that.
Oh, huge, especially such a big series as well. And in those circumstances, he was lucky to have such a great bunch of players around him as well. That definitely would have made the task a little bit easier, but his captaincy was amazing. I thought he kept things very simple in that series. He didn't overcomplicate things for the Aussies, for the team. He made things simple. He gave them a goal, and the team followed. And they just looked like they knew what they were doing under his captaincy. And it was just, and he led from the front, especially in the first match with that 100 in Bangalore. And his captaincy was excellent. His tactics was smart. He was tactically brilliant and just kept things very simple. And the Aussies thought with a clear mind, especially in those first 3 test matches. They thought with a clear mind, and they just they had India on the back ropes. And his captaincy was excellent. I've said it a few times, but it just really was. It's tough to captain in a place like in a country where teams so dominant at home. It's to perform like that as a captain and to pull off a historic victory. And that was like 34 years after Australia won there. That's 34-year gap after Australia won a Test series in India. So he's a part of the cricket history there in Australia as well, and did a great job. Standing in for Ricky Ponting.
Very true. And also, I want to talk about this fourth Test match before winding things up. Especially, it was a very, very low-scoring Test match at Wankhede, fourth Test match. Australia obviously won that series prior to that fourth Test, but I mean, Australia would have loved to obviously clean sweep India, but unfortunately, I think India won by 13 runs in that Test match. It was a very, very close Test match. Obviously, Australia taking the lead in the first innings, but then India counter-attacked, I think, in that second innings, scoring 205. I think that knock from both BVS Lakshman and Sachin Tendulkar. That partnership was vital for them to get that lead. And then obviously Australia were all out for 93. And then Harbhajan Singh and Murali Karthik, I think both of them picked up wickets, eight wickets out of them. So your thoughts on that Test match at Wankhede? I know it was not important for Australia, but still it was a very, very close match, and Australia could have had a chance to whitewash India in that fourth Test.
They not whitewash, but they would have won 3-0. That would have been something as well. But if they managed to win that game, that would have been something special as well. But that pitch was a bit questionable as well. Even the part-time bowlers bowled well. Michael Clarke picked up 6 wickets, 6 for 9, just bowling left arm orthodox spin. That was just insane. And the highest score in the match was 205. India scored 205. Australia scored 203 in their first innings.
Yes.
And the match didn't even last. I don't think it even lasted
3 days.
Full 3 days at all.
Yeah.
It's just such a quick match, and it's just there was a good game for the bowlers, not so much for the batsmen. And those 2 half centuries from VVS Lakshman and Sachin Tendulkar, they were worth. If you look back on that match, you'd think those 2 50s were valuable to India, and they're basically worth hundreds. That's how valuable they were. Especially scoring on that type of pitch where it's just turning like crazy and it's difficult for the batsman. So that's a special knock there. And I think in Australia's first innings, Damien Martyn, who had an excellent series, like I mentioned, he scored a half century. Shows you how classy these players are if he's going to score a half century on that type of pitch. Also, that was a debut Test match for Gautam Gambhir and Dinesh Karthik as well. So, and Nathan Horitz, all 3 of them made their debuts in that Test match. Murali Karthik picked up 7 wickets as well in total. He was the man of the match. But that game was crazy. I'm just going to see how many overs there were in the game. So both teams didn't even bat a full day. They didn't even bat 80 overs.
Yeah.
Think about that.
Because 41 overs, I think, in the first innings of India, and then probably like 3 days, probably this match would have ended. Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Within 3 days. It just ended so quickly, and maximum amount of overs that were faced by a team in this match was 68.2 overs, which was in India's second innings. So it just tells you something. And India scored at a run rate of 3 runs and over in that second innings, which were runs that at certain stages of the game they were scoring runs quickly. Both teams were scoring quickly, but were scoring at a decent rate. Sorry, not a quick rate, but wickets just kept tumbling at regular intervals, and it's just really difficult. In fact, just looking now, there were quite a few ducks in the game as well across the 4 innings.
Yes.
There were about
a lot of low scores, I would say. Not a lot of ducks, I would say, but very low scoring, single digit. There
were about 8 ducks all across 4 innings, and a lot of single digit scores.
True.
Only 3 half centurions in the game. No one scored 100. Highest score in the whole game was 69 from VVS Lakshman.
Yep.
Second highest score was Damien Martyn's
Right.
such an 55.
Yep. Yep. Very
So
true.
just and then the next highest score after that would be 35, I think it was 35 from
Matthew Hayden.
Matthew Hayden.
Yes.
So just shows you how difficult batting was.
Yeah, very true. So, Neel, before we wrap things up, one more question. Why has Australia struggled to win against India after that 2004-5 series? I know, obviously, India, they got that series obviously back in 2004-5, but then Australia had a very good team. When they came to 2008-9, the 2010-11, even I would feel that under Ponting, they had a very good team. But why do you think Australia found it really, really tough to beat India at home since the Border-Gavaskar Trophy has inaugurated? Obviously, they only won, I think, once, if I'm not mistaken. That's the series that we're talking about. So why do you think Australia has struggled? Is it that India have a very, very solid team back in the last 20 years when it comes to Test cricket, or is it just the pitchers that Australia tend to struggle with, especially with spin? So where do you think Australia have got it wrong since that 2004-5 series?
Well, if you look at the record as well of Australia since that series, 2004, in Test matches in the subcontinent in general, just recently they beat Pakistan in Pakistan away from home.
Yeah.
They beat them 1-0, but they lost to Pakistan 2 times in the UAE. They got hammered by Sri Lanka 3-0. They beat Sri Lanka in 2012, 2011 1-0. But then they drew recently against Sri Lanka last year. They even lost a test match to Bangladesh as well. So, overall, I think that just in the last couple of generations, Australia have struggled. Not only Australia, a lot of other teams have struggled in subcontinent. Most, in particular, India, of course, like I mentioned before earlier in the conversation, that if you look at the stats, only one team's won since that series in 2004 again between India and Australia in India. Only one team's won a Test series in India. So India, of course, is a tough place to tour, especially for Test series. But I think Australia just struggled against spin a bit. There's a bit of a stereotype going around in the cricket community, especially online, saying the Australians can't play spin in spin conditions. Don't think it's necessarily true, but in India they definitely do struggle, and I think some of the tactics as well over the years have been a bit strange. Like in the first Test match, I was surprised they didn't select Travis Head, who had a really good Australian summer, and they selected him in this game, and he's got off to a good start in the second innings. Hopefully he can carry on. Just some of the tactics as well, and I think Australian cricket, Australia just tends to struggle in the subcontinent a bit in recent years. They weren't as good as they were in the subcontinent. Like they were before. They're just not as good. But I think they're getting better now. They're slowly getting better, but it'll take a while to really, for them to compete in India. I think maybe in this Test match they have a good chance of winning. Let's see if they do.
Yeah.
But I think it's just maybe like some of the selections as well, some of the off-field drama as well, and also maybe the quality of the batsmen as well. Like they're not playing spin as well. Even though and there's a thing with teams I don't understand. I kind of don't get is they play IPL as well in India.
Yeah.
It's not like that. Most teams don't know the conditions that well, but still people struggle to play in India. Win a series, teams struggle to win a series in India. So despite all the cricket that's been played there, just tells you something how good India have been. And just also to sum up, playing India in India is just India just become a really tough team to beat in India. They've gotten really good now, and they're probably the premier Test team, premier team in the world at the moment, along with England. So the challenge has just gone a lot harder.
I think Australia struggled a lot against left arm spin. I think that's what we've noticed a lot, especially against India. We know obviously they have Jadeja and Aksha Patel right now, and then Sri Lanka at the time they had Rangana Herath, and now I think they struggle against Prabhat Jayasuriya this year. So I think Australia do have a tendency of struggling against left arm spin, but it's good to see now that Australia have some kind of left arm spinners, obviously to practice along with now Kuhnemann just getting a debut, and then obviously so I think there have been even Stephen O'Keefe in the past also. So that's good to see. I think Australia producing a bit of left arm spinners, especially when it comes to Indian pitch, I mean subcontinental pitches mainly, and especially for them to practice also, because it's not that easy to face. I mean, they tend to struggle against left arm spin. That's what a lot of people have noticed, and a lot of analysts also have noticed with this Australian team over the past 10 to 15 years.
Yeah, exactly. And also after the retirement of Shane Warne and then Stuart MacGill as well, who was pretty good. Stuart MacGill had a good Test match record, but he couldn't get in the Australian team as much because Shane Warne was there. Shane Warne was just that good a bowler. So Stuart MacGill would have made any team in the world, most teams in the world, but Shane Warne was just that good of a bowler. Like after those guys retired, Australia struggled to find a decent spinner. They had tried so many spinners, and unfortunately, a lot of them couldn't succeed. Even after Nathan Lyon came in the team, they had a few guys come in and out of the team as well. Even Stephen O'Keefe, he didn't. Even though he had a good domestic record, he just couldn't. For whatever reason, he couldn't solidify his place in the team. But even before Nathan Lyon, they tried so many spinners. There was Bo Casson. There was Bryce McGain, who only played one Test match. He got hammered in South Africa, unfortunately.
Yes.
Jason Krager, he had a bit of a run there. Nathan Horitz as well. Xavier Doherty, Michael Beer. All these guys played for us. They tried so many spinners as well. They couldn't. There wasn't a quality spinner until Nathan Lyon came. And I know a lot of people kind of give Nathan Lyon a bit of stick online, but to be honest, he's been Australia's best spinner since Shane Warne's retired.
Definitely.
Today he's got 100 wickets against India, who play spin so well. That's an achievement, and he's got his record's just gotten better over time. He's gotten smarter with age as well. That's also one thing why Australia might have they definitely struggled in the subcontinent, and especially in India, because they haven't been able to produce quality spinners until Nathan Lyon.
Because I think Nathan Lyon is good in Australia as well. I think he has a good record in Australia, especially we know the pitches are generally for fast bowlers. It's bouncy and it doesn't offer that much assist for the spinners. But Nathan Lyon somehow manages to get wickets even on bouncy tracks. So even on pitches that don't turn, he somehow has those variations that enable him to get wickets. And it's really impressive to see that Nathan Lyon over time has he's crafted his skills and he's getting wickets over there in Australia as well, which is really impressive. It's not easy, especially after Shane Warne. I think probably, he's the best spinner for Australia. Since Shane Warne retired, especially with the way that he gets wickets in both Australia and in subcontinental conditions, and even in any other conditions possible.
Yeah, exactly. And he hasn't had much support. You have spin combinations as well. He hasn't had much support, except Steve O'Keefe, maybe, who had a good series in India in 2017. There haven't been many reliable spinners that have been able to support Nathan Lyon. He's had to do the job himself on a lot of occasions. Young Todd Murphy's been impressive, and I see him as a future star for Australia. He's in his early 20s. Matthew Kuhnemann's okay. I reckon he'll get better with time. But yes, it looks like Australia are starting to get some spinners. It's Todd Murphy's definitely a guy for the future when Nathan Lyon eventually retires. But that's probably been the problem with Australia as well, why they've struggled in the subcontinent, because they haven't quite had decent spinners and good spin bowling combinations as well.
Yeah.
But Nathan Lyon has been impressive over the last couple of years.
Yeah. So we'll wrap things up, Neel. I think we took 30 minutes over there. So thank you so much, Neel, once again for joining the Sports Breakdown. Hopefully I can send this to you as well after this thing ends, the video ends. So thank Thank you so much, Neel, for joining once again. Do check out his podcast, especially Destroy the Stumps podcast. I think goes on YouTube. He uploads videos and then does on Apple, I think Spotify, Google. So you can check it over on all podcast platforms if possible. So do check it out. Many do subscribe to Sports Breakdown as well. I hope you guys had a great time. Watching this, because I know this is a recap, obviously, but we wanted to recall obviously how good this Australian team was back 18 to 20 years, and now why is it so difficult for teams like Australia, England, no any Sena teams or even other teams to actually beat India, because they're just too good right now. So we just wanted to recall how good that Australian team was back in 2004 and 4-5 to beat India in India, because not an easy achievement, and Australia somehow did it back in 2004. So thank you so much, Neel, once again for joining. And yeah, guys, so we'll end it over here. And thank you so much, guys. See you in the next video. Goodbye.
Sure.